Welcome to the August 7th Village Board meeting. This meeting is now called to order. We'll begin with the pledge, and we will remain standing for a moment of silence. Tonight's moment of silence is for two reasons. One is the reason so many in the nation standing, observing a moment of silence. Dozens of people who were taken from us, latest mass shootings, motivated by white supremacy. I'll speak more about how our community is going to together both tomorrow night and going forward. Announcements. But the other reason we're standing for a moment of silence this evening hits closer to home. One of village government's own passed away this week. Derek L. Jones worked for the village's Department of Public Works as a sanitation worker since August 1998. Succeeded his father, Stanley L. Jones, who was also a sanitation worker for the village for over 32 years. Derek attended Ossining schools and graduated from OHS in 1976. After high school, he worked various jobs in Westchester. From 1987 to 1997 for a private sanitation company, New York City, as a member of Local 813 Private Sanitation Unit. Derek's collection of tools at his home on State Street was truly his pride, and he never refused a request if anyone needed to borrow something from his substantial collection. He was at all times a consummate professional and will be sorely missed by the village's Department of Public Works, all the residents of Ossining. Rest easy, Mr. Jones. And I'd just like to welcome Martha. Martha, how do I not remember your last name?
Kitusaka.
That's why.
Yeah. It's kind of long.
I'll work on that, and I'll have it for you in 2 weeks. Welcome. We are very pleased to have you joining us as the village clerk for your first public meeting.
Thank you. Trustee Bazemore? Trustee Levin? Trustee Herrera?
Present.
Trustee Quesada?
Present.
Mayor Garrity?
Present.
Mayors and trustees announcements?
Imagine some of my colleagues have announcements to make this week.
Yes. Just looking it up. Excuse me 1 second.
Anybody else?
What, Mayor Garrity, can you give me a second and go first, if you don't mind, to pull up this description?
Okay, wait.
Okay, thank you. You know, it's not loading. I'll just swing it. So I just wanted to acknowledge and publicly thank the National Organization of Local Progress, particularly Local Progress in New York. They nominated myself and Trustee Bazemore and former Deputy Mayor John Codman for a National Public Service Award, mainly around the conversation about affordable housing and mainly regarding our work and the community's work around ETPA. That was actually honored and discussed at the national convening in Detroit last week. And it was great to have, for the first time in my knowledge, a small community like Ossining on the national stage about the work that happened here and the fight that happened here and the fight that's continuing to happen here. So I just wanted to thank Local Progress for all of their work and for the honor to be nominated for that. It was really great, and I'm great that we had someone there from Ossining representing us all. The past couple of days, last week, so about Sunday, myself and Trustee Bazemore, along with a delegation from Westchester County in New York State, attended the Young Elected Officials Network convening in Florida. And this is a nonpartisan group that empowers, educates, mobilizes, and develops young leaders, 18 to 35, that are in office at every level. There's about 1,300 members, so from Congress to senators to trustees to town councilmen. I must say how inspired I kind of was to kind of return to really do the people's work and really see that the challenges, not just being elected as a young person, but that we're facing here in Ossining aren't unique to us, but also that the need for out of the box thinking and challenging the status quo and really having a conversation about how policies developed really got inspired. We learned a lot about again the census. We learned about the affordable housing crisis, and I know that my colleague Trustee Bazemore will add more about the convening. The delegation in New York is set to meet for the first time, I think in like 30 years. So hopefully we'll meet here in Ossining, and we'll let you know how that goes. But that's where we were the past couple of days. I also wanted to give some prefix heads up that tomorrow there's going to be an online petition that's going to be launching. So the past 2 weeks we had a conversation about myself and Trustee Bazemore proposal asking the police department through a directive to not escort or observe ICE while in our community. That conversation led to a further conversation at a work session where the majority of the board chose not to honor that request and chose to continue the escorting and observing of ICE along with the police chief. And myself and Trustee Bazemore made it clear that we can and will not be supporting that. So we're actually meeting and calling on the ACLU, Neighbors Link, and a couple other partners to join us in this petition to open up the conversation and to really educate why this best practice is best for us and why escorting and observing ICE is really not in the interest of our community. So tomorrow at 10 a.m., when you see it online in English and Spanish, I ask that you please share it. There'll be links as to other best practices in other communities. There'll be links to this meeting, minutes of last week's meeting, to really make sure that everyone has all that they need to be able to sign that petition and really, go further into that discussion. What led, I just wanted to, it was really important for me to clarify that last week the board did choose to request a better outreach plan regarding community relations and trust between the village and the police and the immigrant community, but that necessarily was not the purpose of the policy change that was proposed. So I really had to make that clear because in communication and in the media the past 2 weeks, that was not made clear whatsoever. So that this board did reaffirm those two actions to continue in our community. So local progress, YEO, nice. I think I'm all set. Thank you so much.
Anyone else with comments?
Yeah, thank you, Trustee Herrera, for acknowledging some of the good work that we've done here in the village. I want to speak to some of the conferences that I attended. One of the things that, again, why it's important that you surround yourself with other local elected officials is you see the ways that people go about handling particular challenges. So one community in particularly, Minneapolis, I want to say about December of last year, they began to do a lot of study on housing with respects to people of color, black and brown people, redlining, and really seeing how communities of color were basically kept out of building equity in this community. So after doing a series of studies, they came up with a policy to really eliminate single family homes, not eliminated, but essentially to allow, you know, 2 and 3 family homes in traditional areas that are single family homes. And then also out of out of Minneapolis, they really were looking at ways to do economic development, but actually not economic development, but equity development. Because oftentimes when you are doing economic development, that there's an automatic tension of displacing uh, the local community that has had to suffer through the divestment in those particular neighborhood or blocks, and to look at some of their newer projects that they were very intentional about making sure that there's no displacement, but really pushing for more affordable housing was definitely inspiring and something that is to be modeled after. Also talking to people in the city of Baltimore and Charlottesville is not, which is a city but not really a huge municipality, seeing how they address racial inequities within their budget as well as their charter to really make sure that they put funding to really address some of those historical inadequacies with respects to people of color. There were a number of issues, of course. Both conferences talked about the Census 2020 and the importance of particularly communities that have uh, all communities in general of the importance of getting the count to make sure that the federal dollars will actually meet will reach the communities that are in need, as well as again participatory budgeting, which is just one way that local governments can choose to engage the public in co-governing. So it was definitely very insightful, inspiring conference, and I'm glad I had the opportunity to attend.
Thank you. I actually don't have any announcements. I just have like a couple questions, I guess. One to Quantel, and it's interesting to see it. Maybe you can give me a little more feedback in regards to that offline. But it's interesting to see that because we have to understand that some municipalities, depending on there's a village, a town, city, they do get different funding. Do have different, layouts, so to speak, and urban design, what the massings are and stuff. So I would like to maybe after
Oh, absolutely.
we
I
can
mean,
discuss a little more of that.
yeah.
Regards to one of the comments that Omar mentioned that it's going to be a petition online tomorrow. Um, you mentioned that going to be in Spanish and English. Is it someone translating this properly on Spanish, or are you doing the translation? Is somebody else that is certified doing the translation? I just want to make sure that it's properly translated, whatever petition you
Yeah, I mean,
sending out.
it's not a governmental petition, right? So it's a petition being led by myself and advocates, and one that I have to be very clear about, which we have seen in this dais, is the term translation is very subjective. So I don't really know what you mean by that question.
Trustee Casado, would you like to volunteer to translate?
Not at all.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
that's you guys are
I
working
mean,
on this. And
what I can
that's what
do
we
is
definitely do.
I could
mean,
ask the village manager
I
to
just
hire a
wanted,
translator. And
the meaning. Sometimes when you're trying to say something in Spanish, the translation gets lost in between. So I just want to make sure that whatever you're trying to accomplish, English obviously, it translates well in Spanish. That's all.
Trustee Levin,
Hello.
any announcements for this evening?
No, don't.
Okay.
Administrative report.
Oh, sorry. I just want to
Sorry.
make sure everybody got a chance to speak before I did. Picking up on the last comments, during continuing business this evening, Chief Sylvester is going to update us on his progress toward achieving the priority that was set for the police department by this board at our last work session 2 weeks ago. And that is to strengthen the trust and expand relations between local law enforcement and the Hispanic community. I think there's been a lot of great outreach in recent years with, we acknowledge there has been, to families and to community activities like kickball and block parties and coffee. And what we've asked is that they take it to another level. There have not been enough meetings, or not very many meetings in recent years, with adults sitting in a room and asking questions of the chief and of other law enforcement officers locally. And that's something that I'm very pleased that Chief Sylvester is going to be able to update us on his connections that have been made with local organizations that will be very helpful in facilitating and expanding that communication. I also, now I want to pick up on where we are with tomorrow's Community Candlelight Vigil. Acting on the suggestion of a resident, the village and town are inviting the community to the waterfront tomorrow. That's Thursday evening at 8 p.m. It's at 8 p.m. so that by the time we light the candles, darkness. There is certainly a time for fierce political action. Tomorrow night's vigil is a time for us to gather as a community, listen, sing, to share the light of a candle with a neighbor. The program will include remarks from some community members, a couple of songs being led by local musicians, and as well as the reading of the names of the lives that were taken from us in this past week during the latest mass shootings. These acts of violence that were driven by white supremacy have obviously reminded folks in Ossining as well as the nation of the legacy of hate and violence that has all too often been a hallmark of our country. I have spent much of today reaching out to the community at large, to individuals, to community leaders, inviting them to the vigil and asking for input on how to get folks to attend and how it would be best for us to move forward for tomorrow. But also, there have been a lot of suggestions on how can our community move forward in addressing these kind of actions from both a legal and political and societal perspective, whether that is having some challenging and thoughtful conversations about race, whether it is expressing frustration or a better way forward through art, political action. There have been a lot of ideas that have been percolating among community members, and I look forward to many of those moving forward, and we will continue to share information about how our community can come together to seek to to redirect the course of this country and to do it as well as we possibly can here in our own community.
Mayor Garrity, I just have a quick question.
Sure.
Are you referencing us trying to figure out a course of action to combat white supremacy directly? Is this what the conversations?
What I am doing is reflecting what I've been hearing from folks in the community have expressed a desire to go beyond tomorrow's vigil. Tomorrow's vigil is one step in a community figuring out how to address what sparked the latest mass shootings, and it'll really be driven by the community. That's what I'm reflecting right now.
Okay. So now you had mentioned that the shooting was spurred by white supremacy in your comment.
What are you asking?
So I'm asking, after the visual, are we actively going to look at ways of addressing white supremacy? Like, is that the target? Which I'm supportive of. This is not something to...
Tomorrow is an opportunity for the community to come together and pause.
Okay.
And reflect. And then see how we'd like to. There's no ulterior motive in the establishment of the vigil. It is responding to a request from a community member who asked we come together and honor the deaths of these.
Okay, so again, I'm just trying to figure out. You said that community members had talked about conversations. I'm just asking, like, what kind of conversations? Like, what are they exactly?
It was Reverend Jones' suggestion, and I said I look forward to hearing more from him. He's out of town this week, so I'll talk to him when he gets back.
Thank you.
I will just, I know that Manager Dettori will be updating us on a lot of things that have been going on in the last couple of weeks because we had no meeting last week, so there's that much more to update folks on. One of the topics that we will be discussing more as this year goes on is the potential for a youth bureau in Ossining, and that was another that came up again during a meeting last week that was hosted by Communities That Care, which brought together at the library dozens of community leaders, including student leaders, to talk about how our community can continue to grow in a manner of providing greater safety net and a safer community so that people can thrive. And there are a lot of thoughtful and tangible ideas that came out of it, and I look forward to seeing where that goes. I stayed after a little longer to talk with somebody from the County Youth Bureau as well as Superintendent Sanchez, and they are going to be instrumental in helping us figure out how to move forward here in Ossining, and we'll see exactly what it looks like in this coming year as the process unfolds. It's going to be coming to us as part of the 2020 budget, and where it goes from there is yet to be seen.
Mayor Garrity, I just forgot one thing that I found finally. It loaded, if you don't mind. So every week I'm going to try to share one of these did you know facts. As you know, the statewide housing justice for all platform passed historically in Albany this past month, and the governor signed it into law, and it is effective immediately. So it's actually affecting what is allowed and not allowed in places like Ossining and the county and the entire state as a whole. So the first one today that I found on Twitter, which I thought was very interesting, was did you know that if you're looking for an apartment and the landlord is trying to charge more than 1 month security deposit or more than $20 in broker fees, it is illegal. If you go online right now and actually even view some listings in Ossining, there's some people that are kind of breaking the law as we speak. So this is going to take some time to really learn and educate ourselves and comply with what all these new policies mean. So if anyone needs to be pointed into the right direction about compliance, or if you're a renter and you're being asked for more than 1 month of a deposit, you can report that, and it is enforceable. So you can contact me directly or Quantel or any of the state offices. So let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Omar. And you can also call, we have a landlord tenant committed here that you can actually contact them as well if there's any issues with that. And just as an update, a few months ago when we met, we haven't met lately because either issues with timing and forums and stuff like that, but we were planning actually to have an information sort of meeting in regards to what the new laws are in regard to everything that you actually had any questions on that. So that's going to be coming up pretty soon. Unfortunately, we were not able to meet today as a schedule, but that's something that they have put together. They have everything, and I'll be reporting that to the board, and more welcome to be part of that meeting.
Anything else? Madam Clerk.
Administrative reports, Village Manager Karen Dettori.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I'm very pleased to report that the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation's Hudson River Estuary Program and Cornell University have announced that the fall 2019 Climate Adaptive Design Studio will be held in Ossining. The Climate Adaptive Design Studio is a semester-long course created by Cornell that links students with Hudson riverfront communities to explore design alternatives for more climate resilient and connected waterfront areas. The Climate Adaptive Design Studio assists municipalities in evaluating their waterfront and developing a vision for integration of diverse uses in ways that are visually appealing, highly functional, and resilient to flooding and other climate-related risks. So we're very happy, and this is the town and the village of Ossining that have been selected, and they were selected through an application process that was open to all Hudson River Estuary waterfront communities. So we're very happy about that. I also had a visit from Ossining Town resident Carolyn Stevens this week, who has expressed interest in spearheading a Filmed in Ossining series that showcases at least some of the numerous movies that have been filmed in our community over the past several decades. And while there's still a lot of planning to determine the format and scope of this event, Carolyn met with myself, Jamie Hoffman, Bill Garrison, and Lisa Nestor to discuss ways this could take shape. And Carolyn expects to have something scheduled for spring of 2020. So, on Wednesday, July 31st, we had 9 developers and 1 architect attend a pre-application meeting in response to the request for site concepts and qualifications that the village issued for the village-owned DPW site on Water Street. This RFQ was issued on July 15th, and it was issued to solicit developers to bring forth site concepts for a mixed-income, mixed-use property at that site. As the mayor mentioned, there was a growing resilience program held on August 1st, and I attended that program as well. And in addition to talking about a youth bureau, the program provided training that was particularly valuable, that talked about how childhood trauma, adverse childhood experience, adverse community environments have such a significant effect on all of us. And while it was a particularly relevant training for the many health providers and educators and social service professionals that were there, this training really was beneficial across the board, as it really helped establish constructive strategies for navigating difficult interpersonal relationships and situations. So it was a really valuable event that Alice Joslow spearheaded for Communities That Cares. And again, the interest in the Youth Bureau was high, so that's something we'll be looking at going forward. Representatives from the village and town met with the New York Power Authority to discuss ways that the New York Power Authority can help our communities with energy efficiency and tracking of our energy usage. We are continuing our conversations, and we hope to be establishing partnerships with them to look at ways that we can foster more sustainable capital improvements and also address our energy needs going forward with possible wind and solar options. So that's kind of exciting too. And that's another project that we're doing with the town, since we share our waterfront with them as well, among other things. We had a meeting on last Friday with, I'm sorry. Yeah. We had a meeting last Friday with representatives from DPW, the building department, police department, and our legal department to discuss ways that we can improve code enforcement. And this is part of an ongoing dialogue. We will be having a follow-up meeting tomorrow, requested by Trustee Quesada, to continue this discussion and really solidify our commitment to ensuring the health, safety, and quality of life for our residents. On July 30th, the village and town met with Mario Garcia of Census 2020 to discuss the creation of a complete count committee for the village and town of Ossining. This committee will be comprised of a range of community stakeholders to ensure that we capture an accurate count so that we've received the federal funding our community rightly deserves. And to wrap up, this year's capital paving program is ending with the milling and paving of Westview Avenue. However, there may be additional road restoration work if time and construction schedules allow. Specifically, if we can coordinate with Con Ed and their gas department, we may be able to include Broad Avenue as well as Broadway's gateway to the Broadway Bridge. If these projects don't get completed by the end of this year, they will be prioritized for 2020. Thank you.
Corporation Counsel Stuart Kahan.
Yes. Hi. Hi, Karen. Wanted to wait till you finish so I don't disrupt the whole thing. So the roads getting fixed. You know where we are on budget? What percent of the budget we've used? Because we budgeted quite a bit last year. I think above
I have to
actual
double
was
check with
asked.
Paul, but I will get back to you on that.
Okay. I'm interested in. I know you're thinking let's get as much done, even more than planned. But I just want to know where we are on budget before we go into the next budget one.
Yeah, my understanding is that we're within the budget. So
oh no, I'm sure of that.
Yeah.
The question is, The real
We're-
issue is that we actually budgeted even more in order to get more done, and we want to know where we are against budget, not that we're within budget.
Okay,
That's going to be that's clear.
yes.
Okay.
Okay, I will get back to you on that.
Karen, just to let you know, over the last 2, if not 3 years, when it comes to roads, we've had a lot of conversation about a way to rate the roads.
Indexing.
Yeah, indexing.
Yeah.
So, are we still looking at an official way to index roads to determine which ones actually reach priority?
Yes.
Okay.
I had a question about the complete count committee. I couldn't make that meeting. I was really bummed out, but I did request a brief about how it went, what the next steps were, attendance. And I haven't gotten it yet, so before I reply to that huge long list, I just wanted to follow up on the request for a written brief of that meeting since we hosted it.
We can provide that.
Thank you.
Corporation Counsel Stuart Kahan.
Thank you, Martha, and welcome. Mayor, members of the board, there is no Zoning Board of Appeals meeting this month, so they will not be meeting. There is, however, a Planning Board work session on Monday evening. It is a very heavy Planning Board agenda this month, so if anyone is interested in sort of getting a head start on what some of the various projects are, this is actually a pretty good way to do that. Just to follow up on some of Karen's comments about code enforcement. On Monday, the New York State Senate released its report, final investigative report on code enforcement in New York State. I want to thank Senator Carlucci for sending me the link so that I could get it, and I want to thank my wife for explaining to me how to print it. But it primarily deals with 4 municipalities, not the village of Ossining. It's the city of Albany, city of Newburgh, city of Mount Vernon, and the town of Ramapo. There are, however, certain important findings that are in there dealing with code enforcement, certain legislative proposals, one in particular dealing with disclosing members of limited liability corporations that are the owners of many of the buildings in both Ossining and in other locations. I'll be going through the report. And it'll be one of the matters I think we'll be able to discuss tomorrow. But it is a fairly comprehensive report. They've been studying it for about 2.5 years, dealing with all different code enforcement. As I said, it primarily focuses on those 4 municipalities, but it does go into other topics, and it's quite a read.
Stuart,
Yes.
with the zoning board, just remind me, where are we with Hudson Step? Because I know we had a very limited sort of window.
Yes,
Is that
Hudson
affected in any way?
Step did have the building secured by the date that they were required to. Their demo permit, I believe, was issued today. If not, it will be issued because everything is in fact ready. And then they will start the demolition, which is again in accord with the dates that were set forth by this board. I have been in contact with both Mr. Lieberman and with his attorney, and they're very much aware of the dates and have diaried them as I have. But they did secure it. Also on Monday evening, all members of the Historic Preservation Commission took a walkthrough of the Smith Robinson house. And I want to thank Tracy Corbett for arranging that with Mr. Lieberman, but they did all go through. They visited it. They discussed it at the meeting that they held afterwards. They found it to be very informative. There's a lot of work obviously to be done inside, but they did get additional information from Mr. Lieberman. And as I said, at least as of right now, he's in compliance with the resolution that this board passed.
Police Chief Kevin Sylvester.
Thank you. First, just a timely notice. Right now, we've got wires down on Denny Street near North Highland Avenue. They're live. Con Ed is on their way, and well, one truck was there waiting for other assets. But if you're watching at home and considering driving out in the rain, stay away from Denny Street. Along with the theme of weather, block party number 3 was canceled tonight, unfortunately. I don't believe we're going to be rescheduling that. We're going to put those energies into other things, but we do have one more block party set for this summer. So block party number 4 is going to be August 21st, 2 weeks from today at Dale Avenue Park at 6 p.m. And that one, along with all of the things that we've brought to our other block parties, will also feature Greenberg Nature Center is going to be here. So for some animals and science type stuff. Tomorrow evening, we've got Cops and Kids Kickball. That's going to be 6 p.m. in Nelson Park. As always, that is free. And the big question we always ask is what ages? It's cops and kids. Kids are big, kids are little, kids are old, kids are young. If you're a kid at heart, a big kid, a little kid, a Toys R Us kid, you can come play kickball with us. August 17th, we've got Coffee with a Cop at Down to Earth Market. So at the farmers market, while you're there shopping, stop by, see some of our staff. It's a great chance to ask a question, find out about some of the stuff we do, or just make a friend. Spoke with Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES. We'll be bringing the GED program back to Ossining come September for the school year. So for those that were interested, stand by. We don't have a location set yet, but we're looking to nail that down, and we should be ready to announce that in the next couple of weeks. So if you need a high school equivalency degree, it's no longer called the GED program. It is the TASK program. So if you are continuing in TASK or need to get started in TASK or want to know about TASK, stand by. We're going to have some information on all of our social media platforms about that, but we're looking forward to bringing that program back here and continuing to help people further their educations. Along with the beginning of school, we're working on some information stuff to go out and enforcement efforts that are going to start happening in September for traffic, particularly around the schools. We're working with the superintendent next week to go over their traffic plan as the new driveway construction is moving forward and hopefully going to be finished. I don't know if that's going to be done in time for school, but when it is done, it's going to make some changes. So we're working on all kinds of projects there and in other locations to make sure that we can not only keep our roads safe, but hopefully make them safer. And a last notice, we have a lot of different services we provide here that people sometimes forget about or might not know about. This week, because we got brownies, we were reminded to remind you that we do dark house checks. And that means that if you're on vacation or away from your home for any period of time and you want us to periodically check on your home to make sure that things are safe, you simply stop by the desk here, fill out a form, and we have officers check your house daily to make sure that everything remains in order. You don't have to bring brownies. That just reminded us we should tell more people about it.
Madam Clerk.
Organization announcements.
This is an opportunity for anyone in the community. If you have an organizational announcement, if you have an event coming up for an organization you're involved in, you're welcome to tell the public over the next 2 minutes.
Okay, moving on to the village board resolutions. Is there anyone here who wishes to address the board on any of the resolutions this evening? Okay, so the approval of minutes for July 17th, 2019. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the minutes of the July 17th, 2019 regular meeting as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk.
Approval of minutes July.
All those in favor?
Oh, sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
All those opposed? Approval of minutes July 20, 2019. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the minutes of the July 20th, 2019 special meeting as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
You weren't here yet.
Was that the?
Yep.
Yeah.
That was the. Oh, the. When I was late. That's right. I was late.
Oh.
Never mind. I missed it. Right. Abstain for the Saturday meeting.
Okay.
Yes.
Approval of minutes July 25th, 2019. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the minutes of the July 25th, 2019 special meeting as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Approver of voucher detail August 7th, 2019. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the voucher detail report dated August 7th, 2019 in the amount of $944,801.92.
So moved.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Comments on the board?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Resolution authorizing the village manager to sign an agreement with Edmunds and Associates Incorporated. Resolved that the Village of Ossining Board of Trustees authorizes the village manager to sign an agreement with Edmunds and Associates Inc., 301 Tilton Road, Northfield, New Jersey, for the purchase of the Municipal Computer Solutions Java application software and/or hardware following the review of the agreement by Corporation Counsel, and be it further resolved that the Village of Ossining Board of Trustees authorizes the village manager to sign an agreement with Edmunds and Associate Inc., 301 Tilton Road, Northfield, New Jersey, to provide exclusive MCSG hosting services on behalf of the village, following the review of the agreement by Corporation Counsel. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I just want to, this is something that we spoke about at length at our last work session 2 weeks ago. It, where are we with, I know you've been in contact with the town supervisor. I did not get a chance to view that portion of their meeting last night. I know that did they discuss it at their meeting last night or where, they did. Oh, there you go. Thank you, Tom. I realize we're just authorizing the signature of it, but it is somewhat dependent on the town and the village agreeing that we're going to move forward and exactly what that's going to look like. So do you feel that we're going in the right direction and it'll work out?
We are going in the right direction and things are always working out for us. So we will definitely, we're actually meeting with them tomorrow at 3
Okay.
o'clock.
Okay.
I can piggyback on that one. So Stuart, you're going over the agreement with the town, Bolton?
I
or
will be
Lloyd?
in communication with the town attorney. I've gone over the agreement. There's some things that we're still waiting for some additional information back from Edmunds. There were some requests that were made by Tom and Dale. But yes, I will be having discussions with my counterpart with the town so that we can get everybody on the same page with regard to that. Correct.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
Resolution appointing
Oh, you have to say all those in
Oh,
favor.
sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Resolution appointing financial advisor. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the village treasurer, the Village of Ossining Board of Trustees hereby retains the firm of Capital Markets Advisors, LLC, 11 Grace Avenue, Great Neck, New York, 11030, to provide financial advisory services to the village, effective immediately in accordance with the proposal dated July 10th, 2019. And be it further resolved that the village manager is authorized to sign the financial advisory service agreement with Capital Markets Advisors, LLC, for such services, subject to review and approval of the agreement by the Corporation Council. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Resolution approving honorary street naming policy. Resolved that the Village of Ossining Board of Trustees adopts the Village of Ossining honorary street naming policy detailed below, and that the policy shall be placed on the village's website and otherwise be made available. Village of Ossining's honorary street naming policy purpose. The Village of Ossining Board of Trustees wants to set out a policy to allow for the honorary naming of streets in the village. The honorary street naming would honor current and former residents of the village who have made contributions to the village through accomplishments during the honoree's lifetime. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Well, I just want to say thank you very much to Stuart for doing so much research on similar policies that exist elsewhere, and to everyone on the board for thoughtful exchange on how to do this well, and to the village historian for also providing some of her insights and input. She's been a part of some of the decision making in the past, but we've never had a formal process. And this came about because there was a community member, Jim Johan Jr., who was here in the room, and we realized we've done a couple in recent years, and they were both very different, and there was not a formal policy. And with this, we will be establishing a formal policy that will help us to set future boards on a path to having a consistent way that community members can propose for honorary street namings. And we look forward to having this in place. And then I imagine we're going to get our first application very soon. Any other comments? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Authorization for village to accept payment and satisfaction of foreclosed tax lien 34 Eastern Avenue. Whereas, in accordance with Ossining Village Charter Article 4, the village treasurer is charged with the duty of collecting real property taxes from persons named in the tax roll in accordance with New York State Real Property Tax Law Section 1110. The village treasurer has the authority on or before the expiration of the applicable redemption period to accept payment of real property taxes from such persons, along with all charges authorized by law for real property subject to delinquent tax liens. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the Village of Ossining Board of Trustees hereby authorizes and directs the treasurer to accept payment in an amount sufficient to pay in full the total amount, including any interest, penalties, and other charges authorized by law, of the real property taxes and any tax liens, both pending and foreclosed, for property located at 34 Eastern Avenue, 89.19-3-7 in the Village of Ossining, and authorizes any and all necessary filings or notifications to evidence a release of said liens against the real property. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Call for public hearing proposed local law 4-2019 titled A Local Law Amending Chapter 114th Electrical Standards of the Village of Ossining Code. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby calls for a public hearing to take place at 7:30 p.m. on August 21st, 2019 at the Birdsall-Fagan Police Court Facility, 86-88 Spring Street, Ossining, New York, or as soon thereafter, as the matter may be heard, to consider proposed local law 4-2019 titled A Local Law Amending Chapter 114th Electrical Standards of the Village of Ossining Code. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Call for public hearing, proposed local law 5-2019 title, a local law amending chapter 201 plumbing of the Village of Ossining Code. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby calls for a public hearing to take place at 7:30 p.m. on August 21st, 2019 at the Birdsall-Fagan Police/Court Facility, 86-88 Spring Street, Ossining, New York, or as soon thereafter, as the matter may be heard, to consider proposed local law 5-2019 titled A Local Law Amending Chapter 201 Plumbing of the Village of Ossining Code. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Fire Department, Washington Hook and Ladder Number 2, removal from active roles. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby removes Michelle Killarheen from the active roles of the Ossining Fire Department, Washington Hook and Ladder Company Number 2. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Fire Department Appointment Contract Hose Company Number 2. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the Fire Chief, Patrick Ryan, Ossining, New York, was elected an active member of Contract House Company Number 2 for interior firefighting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board?
Just a correction. It's Cataract Hose Company number 2.
Ooh.
We'll deem that so amended and we'll change it in the minutes.
Thank you.
Fire Department transfer Senate Hook and Ladder. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the Fire Chief, Justin Carlson has transferred his membership from Washington Hook and Ladder to Senate Hook and Ladder. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Second.
Yeah.
Oh, we did.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we did.
Have to change that.
So moved.
Before we vote on this, I'll just this is a good reminder to thank the fire department for another very successful annual fire parade, which took place last Friday. It was a perfect night for a parade, and there were departments from all over the region, many of them led by marching bands, and the community came out. The streets were lined with community members. It was really a lovely evening in Ossining, and thank you to the Ossining Fire Department for putting together another successful event. Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Is there any continuing business of the board?
There is. I was going to say Chief Sylvester, but did you have something you wanted to update
No,
us on?
I was
Oh.
waiting for you to just say that.
Okay. Chief Sylvester, if you could please give us an update, tell us about where you are in expanding communications and improving trust with the Hispanic community.
Sure. So we reached out to a bunch of different organizations locally and spoke with a lot of people, and what we found was there's a lot of opportunities for us to engage with people in different ways. So we reached out to St. Anne's, we reached out to the Open Door, we reached out to folks in the Ossining School District, which sort of encompasses also, they have a Parents Alliance and Proyecto Alcance, which we've met with before, and Padres Hispanos, which is sort of more of like an internet group, but all of those groups are sort of centralized within the school district and facilitated there, and I think they're going to be getting some space at Park School. So things that we talked about are having discussion sessions, primarily because it's the board's prerogative on immigration, although the folks that we met with said that they had bigger issues with wanting to talk about things like alcohol abuse and domestic violence, but felt that any conversations we have are a great jump-off point for other issues being felt by that community. So it's a good opportunity for us to show support for a number of different issues. Another thing we discussed was the potential for support networks that some of those groups were looking to put together for families impacted by immigration enforcement. And primarily what that means is that these groups would get together to ensure that any families impacted by immigration, that their children would have the ability to get to school, that families were cared for, that nobody's going to lose their home, and that folks have food. So I've always been a firm supporter of making sure that those family members that are impacted by negative events have a good support network in place. So I think that's really great. To add to that, one of the things that some of those groups had spoke about was, and I think that St. Anne's Open Door and Ossining School District presents some really good options, because those really, although we may catch some people more than once, a lot of those different places, you're going to get different crowds in those different locations. But another option for us, and I'd spoken about this before, was plans for where we do coffee with a cop. We talked about café con los oficiales, or café con las policías, and picking some of the Hispanic establishments around town for us to do more of casual gatherings. Some of the challenges for us are, when you do a program like that, you're not necessarily expecting to have a crowd come to you. It's more of us going to the places where people already gather, and sort of appearing there in a pop-up fashion, offering people a casual means for engaging with us. One of the challenges for us is that in a lot of the Hispanic community, where people may not have, some of them are lower income and a lot of them blue collar, a lot of those folks tend to go in the morning and they're getting what they need and they're off to work and they can't be late. In the afternoons, that's family time. So, we're working with some of those groups to find good locations where we can go, or times really. I think weekends are going to be more of an option for that, but places that we can go and find different groups that we can gather with. And some of the things they said were important was that in some of the cafes in the evening time, you'll get some of the men who don't always attend all of the parent groups alone. A lot of times you have parents. I know that we spoke last week or 2 weeks ago about the need for this to be more of a serious discussion and for adults, but there is a dire need for childcare. So at each of these, there's going to have to be some component of family gathering there, and that's something that we're willing to support in terms of working with these groups to find ways to care for children, to give children something to do while their parents are speaking with us. Certainly the topics that we're discussing are not necessarily child friendly. I leave that up to all parents as to what they want their children to participate in. But for many of the families where the children are young, it's probably best that those kids have somewhere else to go and something productive to be doing. So we're working on plans with some of them to find ways that we can occupy the kids in a productive manner while parents are working with us. And that's pretty much where our starting point is. We haven't put dates on the calendar because each of these groups has sort of their own stuff, and we have a built-out calendar with not only our events already in place, but also training evolutions. So we're going to be, over the next few weeks, starting to put things on the calendar so we can sort of squeeze everybody in and make sure it works for everybody.
Questions on the board?
Sure. Thank you for that. I mean, that's great that all that's been done in 2 weeks. So I do appreciate that. So I'm pretty versed at what Open Door does, the school district does, and St. Anne's does, and how we all kind of all cross paths and work together. I kind of want to learn more about. I saw the ask 2 weeks ago more as what are we going to be doing from the police department to really go into procedure and emergency cases, and so we had a whole discussion about like how we don't interfere, what our role is, why our intention is to be there, and why you and your colleagues feel most appropriate. I don't understand. I don't see that being explained in any of these outlets, or understand how it's going to be explained differently going forward.
Well, I mean, I've given that explanation a number of times, and I'm not sure how many different ways I can give it, but I'm willing to give it as many times as necessary. I will tell you that I can't speak for any one of those organizations, but I can tell you that every single person I spoke to said to me, including all of the immigrant groups that I met with, that the actual discussion of what goes on during immigration enforcement is not a major priority for those groups. Their concerns are more operational leading up to those types of things and how we can help people integrate into the community. So I understand that I can't speak for every person. All I can tell you is that I will continue to explain to people what we do. None of those groups expressed any concern with how we're doing business. In fact, they all agreed that the fact that we're doing this with an eye towards supporting the community in terms of sharing information with the school district, making sure families are supported after these things happen. All that works for those groups. And if you don't want to listen to me, you can go and ask them. I don't know if they'll sign your petition, but I don't know how else to explain what we do. I thought I was abundantly clear 2 weeks ago. I'll keep explaining if that's what's necessary.
I don't think it's about explaining. So the conversation that we had in detail as a board 2 weeks ago, um, that so the ask was obviously right. The ask was for the directive to have ICE and OPD not be on scene together, right? So the majority of the board and at your professional discretion, that was pivoted to just not grant that request, but to strengthen how we communicate regarding why we want to be one of the communities that actually is on scene observing or escorting while ICE is here. The conversation went into what that means and how we went into detail about how you can't really interfere, but you could possibly help later. So I don't. So because it's so serious and because it's regarding actual enforcement and or questioning and or investigations that are being done in our community, I guess I'm trying to understand how that's being discussed as far as that if they do see us there, they can't call us over when they're being interviewed or arrested by ICE. I mean, we went through this, so I guess I get what I clearly understand what you're saying, but my question and or how that's going to be communicated has yet to be answered.
We're going to explain it, and then we're going to have a conversation about it.
So I'd like to just pick up on something that you said, Chief, in your explanation of your status update. And that was, I'm glad that the conversations that you're going to have and that you're hearing about, that they're not going to be sent out as there's an agenda, come and talk about immigration with the police department, because that's really, that's not what I had in mind. So I think it should be broader conversations. The ask as I saw it, as I articulated, and others may have taken away something different, was that this board sets big picture policy for all of our departments, and particularly for the police department, where we have a relationship as the Board of Police Commissioners. And what was loud and clear was that we want you to prioritize building trust with the Spanish-speaking community. And one way to do that is to expand opportunities to have these kind of conversations. And I recalled, and I will again, the meeting that you and I, as well as the town supervisor and a member of the school board, attended 3 years ago. And it was organized by Proyecto Alcance, and it was at Park School, and it was a room full of Spanish-speaking parents. That's one organization that regularly organizes their child care, and it's very family friendly. And maybe some of the others don't have that format. And I'm sure that every effort will be made to be accommodating so that everyone, as much as possible, can participate. And what we found was that a lot of the questions at that time were about driver's licenses and about cars being impounded, and if you get stopped by the police and you're driving without a license. And that ended up being a lot of the questions at that time. We didn't necessarily anticipate that would be the topic of discussion. At least I didn't. And I imagine that if folks were to come in a room today and ask questions, the questions would be different. As far as if immigration is driving our desire to prioritize this, the immigration policy that is happening right now in our country is breeding deep mistrust of law enforcement and deeply felt fear by members of our community. And that is why we are asking for the police department to further prioritize building trust, because it's something that has to be undertaken very deliberately, because right now national policy is very deliberately undermining it. So thank you for making some progress. I look forward to hearing how those meetings are moving forward. Other comments and questions from the board for the chief on this?
Not particularly on this. I do want to kind of respond to the comment that you made. Yes, there was a loud cry of this board to have the conversations, but I do want to reiterate Trustee Herrera's ask and my ask last week that there was a particular ask
Yes,
to definitely stop the escorting of ICE. I just have one quick question for you, Chief, not on this particular matter. Is there any update about the noose-like object that was found in Lewis Engle Park?
That investigation remains open. We continue to encourage anybody that's seen anything or knows anything to update us or to call us. We've received a number of calls. Those calls have ranged all over the map with information. I don't know how much of it is trustworthy. A few leads that seemed like they were going somewhere didn't go where we thought they would. But it's something that we take seriously and will not be closed until we can affirmatively say that we know exactly what happened one way or the other.
Thank you.
All right, Madam Clerk.
Is there new business of the board?
Yes.
Oh.
So I was away in the city for work, but I got an email with a poster, and I got a call from a business that there were food trucks on village streets, and are we now taking applications and allowing food trucks on our streets? So can someone tell me what happened across the street with food trucks on public property operating? Yeah, because I know I'm just asking because I got a lot of phone calls from, you know.
What has occurred across the street is there is my understanding is there's a food truck there. Food is not being sold from the food truck. It's not being vended from the truck. It is being ordered inside the establishment. And the fee is being paid inside the establishment, which actually differentiates our peddler and vendor license. It's a different circumstance.
But food trucks aren't under the peddler event licenses because we don't have a policy for them yet.
The peddler and vendor license specifically talks about vending of various items, which would include food. So that's why in this particular case, the vending was not occurring at that particular location. Had that been the case, then that would have been a different circumstance. But that's why this differed, because of the method of the sale that was taking place.
So can I set up a food truck either in front of my apartment building or my parents' house, take the money inside, but have them do business on public property outside? Is that what you're saying?
If you come to me and make that request, I would discuss it with the manager, but it's very possible you might be able to do that. If, in fact, there are a number of parking spaces that we'd have to deal with and other issues. But that was what distinguished that situation from other situations.
So a business came to you and found.
Sorry, who exactly came to you, Stuart?
I was approached by, this was a while ago, by the Sing Sing Kill Brewery.
Okay.
Okay, so they came to you and they found what sounds to be an acceptable, I don't want to call it loophole because it's allowed. So they found an acceptable way to use village property to produce food for a private entity. And you didn't find any of this relevant when we discussed creating a food truck policy and all of the analysis and concerns that we brought up during that conversation that you were part of about just having them on village roads. By the way, full disclosure, this is not about any business. This is about just that we never really continued that discussion due to the board's desire to learn about all the implications about having that and actually having a food truck, that regardless of whether it's being sold inside or sold outside, but the whole notion of having a private business on wheels on a village road. You didn't find that to be relevant during the conversation or to let us know that that's being allowed?
I felt that the request that was made to me by the business owner was within the scope of the code, and therefore it was appropriate.
So the police chief, did you post those parking spots to be closed?
I did.
Okay.
Okay, so help me out. What application was filled out?
Yeah, like what's the process if I want to do that? Step by step.
In this particular case, the individual had approached me. I have to go back and look because it's a while ago, but I spoke with the individual and it went from there. I don't believe there was any particular permitting process as long as the particular operator of the food truck was licensed by the Westchester County Department of Health, which it is.
Do you have a copy of the license?
Of the county's health license? No, it's posted on the truck.
Did you view it?
Did I view it? No.
Yes. So who exactly came to you and had this conversation?
Mr. Garrity came to me, and there may have been one other person. I am not certain.
Okay. So just out of procedure,
Right.
should local businesses be contacting you?
Happens all the time. All the time. I can't count the number of times in a day.
Okay. So approximately what time did this happen?
I'd have to go back, Trustee Bazemore. I can look at my notes. I have it all on my email, but I can't tell you right now exactly when it was.
It's just.
So-
Oh, sorry,
But in
go
terms
ahead.
of contacts, I can let you know. I can't even count.
So I really want you to, again, just repeat it for me because I want to understand the nuance of this particular code. So because you go, so what does our code say with respects to the food trucks?
There's no specific language in the code with regard to food trucks.
Are food trucks allowed in the village?
They're currently not allowed to vent.
Yet there is no specific language that explicitly says no to food trucks. We don't have the term food trucks in our code.
So is it allowed or not allowed?
Depending on where you're vending, we do have certain restrictions in terms of where they have to be located. So it's more locational than specific as to the item itself.
So they're not in the code, but there's a place where they can be located. Is that what you're saying?
I believe that's correct.
So how does that work?
I don't understand what you're saying. How
So
does
we
that
don't
work?
actually have food trucks in our code currently, correct?
I've answered you, yes, that's
Yes.
correct, sir.
But you said that the food trucks can be located in the village even though they're not a part of the code.
Well, we have many, well, if something's not part of the code, that doesn't mean that it can't be done. I mean,
Okay.
it's not illegal by absence. Usually you want to mention it.
Okay, and so normally,
The key here was that there was no vending taking place
so that everything was done.
inside
Inside.
the business, correct.
So as long as it's done inside of a business, then it's okay,
In this particular case, it was my determination. That's
according to
correct.
your interpretation.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, so the reason why I'm bringing this up as troublesome is we identified very clear environmental questions, quality of life issues, whether it's in a residential area, whether it's apartments or houses, whether they're brick and mortar businesses, whether it's being sold inside, whether it's for a private event. I mean, so many factors. We even, I included the chamber at that time in the discussion. And this happens, so people see it and they go, wait, what happened to the discussion? Isn't out loud? It looks very sloppy and messy. I mean, I'm glad you explained it, and I'm glad I brought it up because I feel like otherwise you wouldn't have actually explained what happened.
If
But-
I had been asked, I would be more than happy to, but I wasn't asked.
Well, going forward, when it comes to stuff like that we're discussing legislatively or policy-wise, it's not rocket science to think that people are going to ask questions or assume that certain actions are acceptable or not.
With all due
So,
respect, Trustee
excuse me,
Herrera,
excuse
if
me,
I- if
excuse
I
me.
may,
No, no,
let me-
no,
let me
no,
just-
no,
just-
no.
you're making
You may
it-
not because I'm not done. So no,
I'm going to just
no,
say this.
no, 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 no. So
I'm
I have,
very
I had,
concerned.
no, sir. So I
That's
have,
not how
no.
it works.
It is how it works because
you've made a comment about how I do my job. I'm going
I-
to make it very clear. People come in and ask, they want to know if they can get a permit. They want to know how to do something. I'm more than happy each time. But if what your directive is that every time someone comes to me and asks to do something, I need to report it to the board, that I don't see how I have 10 to 15 people who come in every day.
What
That-
permit did you offer though, Stuart? What permit did you give them?
like what application? How do we? I understand that your volume is very high, and I do actually agree with you and Karen that our businesses call you all the time for stuff that you can't even imagine, and it's great that your office is a resource to that. How this process went about, though, is what is kind of wanting me to know going forward what all those inquiries are, because they all seem to be different for different types of groups or people.
Well, that's actually true. So we have a really great thing happening where lots of people want to do things and do business in a different way. So even in the very short time that I've been here, I've probably gotten at least 10 different requests for different kinds of events that are a little bit atypical than we've been experienced before, partly because the nature of how we do business is changing rapidly. And it is difficult for any municipality's codes, which code changes not move rapidly, to keep up with it. So one of the things that and you and I discussed this earlier today, is we want to make things easier, not more difficult for people. Food trucks are here. They're going to be here to stay. Sing Sing Kill is not the only business that has made these requests. We've gotten other requests
No,
from
I know.
other
That's why I'm asking you
businesses.
about the procedure. Yeah.
So I think that what we're trying to do is facilitate to the degree possible, but it does beg the question that we need to look at these things going forward. This is an ongoing conversation. It's very, very difficult to create a universal plan for this because every single event is slightly different and not something that we've typically done in the past.
Just to clarify, what we discussed was event permitting and procedure. This conversation and the board's conversation in the past was just discussing about how to possibly allow the permitting of food trucks on our village streets. Now, that could be tied to an event, but it could just be a restaurant or a house or something that just wants a food truck or it could just be a business, as we say, we're embracing all different types of businesses that just are on wheels, right? And we had a whole conversation that I encourage you to watch, and there's many questions raised and many suggestions, and I think that from my understanding, it was actually supported by the majority of the board, including myself. But I just didn't know that there were loopholes within that, and that made it possible in ways that weren't, I guess, in the same area as the permitting conversation. And because the conversation has been had, and we never really followed up with or got the questions answered or the analysis done, I guess it just brings us to here when something like that happens, or because we've had other people in the past request a food truck, and they were told no. If you call the clerk's office right now, they will tell you no. Because I actually tried that. So, that's why it's troubling. So am I happy that this is reigniting the conversation as to our permitting and our procedure? Yes. Do I understand the case-by-case Paul Stewart basis for it? No. But duly noted.
Stuart, have you received other requests like this?
Yes.
Have you made other accommodations?
No, because in the other request that was made to me, the person was going to be selling directly from the food truck.
Who found a loophole to have people sell inside of the establishment versus actually like selling from the truck?
There have been several different groups that have come or businesses that have asked to do things. We have pop-up shops, we have different things. So it's not necessarily coming from, it's been something that some of the businesses, First Village Coffee, Sing Sing Kill, have asked to do. But I think that where we're going with this, if we're going to get this on the track where it needs to be, is what do we want to do with this and how do we want to address these things? Because they're going to keep coming up. And there's obviously issues. We want to protect quality of life. We want to make sure that the vendors are licensed and safe and registered with the Board of Health. But I don't think that we want to stop innovative things from happening in our community. So since there's such a extreme interest in doing things, and we have there's 3 other events that we're not even talking about that are asking for things that we haven't done before. So we're trying to facilitate that. We're not trying to be selective in it. We're trying to set some ramifications for how we go forward. So I think really it's incumbent on all of us to have a really constructive dialogue about what that looks like. And now, since I'm here, maybe it's a good time that we can bring this up again, because I'd like to see us be able to do more things like this as opposed to less.
Madam Dettori, I appreciate your comments. However, we can have conversations and moving on. The question still remains is who found the loophole?
There's no loophole.
If I come and I say to you, typically, if I say I want to do a food truck, and we all know that when you go to a food truck, pay money, and the food comes out, and we've already established that has been something that has not been allowed, right? And according to Corporation Counsel, there have been requests, yet and still, this particular applicant comes to us and then, not to us, but to Corporation Counsel and says, hey, I want to do a food truck. And then somehow someone finds a place where if the food is actually being sold from the inside and then dished out the truck, then that doesn't violate the code. So the question is who found the loophole?
Again, I think that question is not that somebody found a loophole. Somebody said, can I do this way? And Corporation Counsel determined that that was not in violation of the code.
So the applicant is the one who said, hey.
People ask things every day, Quantel, Trustee Bazemore,
Thank you.
And we actually accommodate those to the best we can. It's not finding loopholes. It's facilitating a way to do business. It's facilitating a way to do things. People also have used food trucks for private events where they've essentially done the same thing, where the food is specific to the event in a specific location. So it's not really that different from that.
I hear you. I'm not here to do a back and forth with you, Madam Manager, but I do want to reiterate that there have been people, again, as being stated, that have come looking to actually do the same thing,
and we have recently told them if
and
they
they were
do it this
unable,
way,
and they were unable to do it.
So, again, things change, things evolve. Anybody who's come to me recently, and there have been people looking to do this, I have told them that this is the way they can do it going forward.
So you were manager during this time period.
I don't remember if I was manager when this happened because it probably happened around the time I was coming on. But what we've had other people make similar requests, and provided they're following the same procedures, we're not doing it. We're not telling other people they can't do this. They can't use a food truck in this regard.
Currently, so all right. So I wanna, Stuart, please get me a full timeline as to when this happened, because even the manager does not know whether it happened during her time. You don't know what date it is. You don't.
Happy to. I can get
Okay, so let's do that. And also, I want to know when someone finds, I won't call it a loophole, I'll call it a creative solution. I'm a business person, so I find ways to call things in a better way. Is they came to you, there was a way that it was permitted to use village roads for that purpose. At what point does a homeowner, a property owner, a tenant, a business owner get notified of such activity on village? So, like, what is the process, since we don't actually have a procedure or a policy for that? Like, how do you determine whether?
We don't really have policies to do that in any regard for things that we do. So if somebody has an interest, I mean, we don't announce every single time that we give a permit or establish something like that. So there is discretion in what we do. That's not necessarily something that we are broadcasting because it's discretionary. So
you don't find a truck that could have a loud motor, smoke coming out in a residential neighborhood. You don't find that to be at your discretion.
Yes, that would be it. That's exactly what
you don't,
would be
no,
at
no,
the discretion.
you don't find that to be information that people that live in the area, work in the area, or are in the area. You don't find that information to be relevant to them at all.
I don't think that's what we're talking about. So we're not talking about establishing food trucks in highly residential areas. So again,
well, we just allowed one, so
It's the village center.
at your discretion.
It's a business district. This is a business
Right,
district.
but you incorporate all that's in that district, right? So my question was, what was the process and what was the discretion in determining that because of all that's within a business
I think
district?
we've explained that. So
Oh,
as you said,
no, no, you did not explain it. So
that's
why I'm breaking it down to you.
We did explain it.
No.
Somebody asked if they could do it this way.
I'm
Council
asking
determined
you.
it was.
No, I'm asking your discretion. So you said that you didn't deem it necessary at your discretion to notify businesses.
That's not what I said.
So what did you say, Karen?
That's not what I said. I said
What did you say?
You know what? I'm gonna.
If I may just
I'm done with
interrupt,
this conversation because I'm not gonna have words put in my mouth, and I'm not gonna be grilled as if I'm on trial.
Is there something, I understand what you're trying to ask, I guess, but you want to put this at a different discussion to we can actually have a better understanding of what food trucks is? Is that, was that
We
what
already
you're trying
had
to-
that. No, I'm talking
Yes,
about
but
this
we didn't
particular
pass anything.
case.
I understand that. I understand, but we're not going anywhere right now.
I don't know why we're not. I mean, that's a
It-
choice. I'm asking clear questions.
I don't think it's a choice. I think it's more like if I was to call the State Department to a clarification to a building code. Their interpretation of something, it may be different from the interpretation of the building inspector. Again, I'm just trying to put something in concept in what Stewart did at his judgment. So again, so to me, is interpretation of, you call it loophole. To me, is
I called it a creative solution. Go on.
you call it loophole.
I called them.
Oh, you call it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I called
both,
One of you
changed
guys
it.
called the loophole. All right. So to me, it's like, all right. So what are we trying to accomplish? Are we trying to encourage businesses to come into our village, to our municipality? Are we trying to figure out a way to do it the right way, if you want to call it that way? To me, it's more like a discussion. Maybe we can put into a work session as a bigger conversation.
Great.
Listen, I can
Yeah,
understand.
So
we-
I would like to,
Well, no, we already
who's
had a
this?
discussion
You-
about
you
this.
have it-
No,
you
no,
have
I
it?
don't.
No, no, no.
I have to clarify.
Continue.
I just want to clarify. The manager and the corporation counsel, in numerous ways, mentioned their discretion. And I'm having a very difficult time knowing where we are and knowing all of the facets and components of a business district, how their discretion was not to notify all of those stakeholders what is being permitted on village streets.
Well, I'm sorry, Trustee Herrera, because it wasn't actual permit. I will be careful about the language that we use.
Right, the
Stewart,
verbal permitting, whatever you want to call it.
And typically with the peddler's license, are you required to have insurance?
Yes.
I would have to check that, Trustee Bazemore. I don't know if the peddler actually requires insurance. There's other requirements in our code, and I'm not sure about the insurance requirements, so I'd have to get back to you. I just don't have that off the top of my head.
When you made this arrangement, did you ask the village to be insured at all?
Additionally insured, like we usually do to other vendors.
Understood. No, I did not request an additional insurance here. I did not see it as necessary.
Okay. Chief, what exactly was your, like, so when this happens, then what do you do? Do you have a role in this?
Like, are you just told, or like?
No, if there's events regularly on public property where the manager and I discuss what is needed in terms of traffic safety. She asked me to block off some parking spots, so I did.
Okay. Typically there's no paperwork that comes to you or anything like that.
There's no paperwork for us to block off 2 parking spots.
Okay.
Ever.
Thank you.
So just so we could continue the original in-depth conversation that was had by this board about how to improve and facilitate expanding entrepreneurship opportunities for those that do it within a car or food truck or whatever you want to call it. That was already started by this board at a very decent conversation, and it's great that it's now going to be continued. But this case, because it's so different, that it didn't require or fall under that conversation is why I'm bringing it up tonight. So when I got the calls from the 3 businesses that applied in the past and we said no in front of their places, they want to know why they were treated differently, that's all. And I have to respond and report back. And your response tonight about your discretion to me was unacceptable.
I don't think you understood what I was saying. So I don't know what you thought I said, but it's what I said is there's always discretion in any event. Everybody uses discretion. We all use discretion all the time. So what I said is, if you would like to have those businesses call us, they will be entitled to execute an event in a similar fashion if that's what they choose to do. We would be happy to accommodate that. So
Thank
you
you
can tell them that.
I will, and I'll let you know who they are. But I do still want to understand, and it's fine if you don't want to answer it now, but I don't understand the discretion regarding.
You know, we did actually change, and I guess it's a little unclear to me because sometimes there's parades, there's rallies, there's events, and we changed our local law in the last year, actually because a number of times things had come up and there was of a different nature, but where there was a time sensitivity, and our code at the time, and in fact, it was some of it was applications from you. Where the board, we had to get 3 trustees in a room to approve a request for an event. And so we changed our law so that events would come to be at the discretion of the manager and the
Yep.
police chief. That did not, I was actually surprised that that did not then become a form, an application. It is still done just by communication.
Exactly. And that's what I was trying to convey. So one of the things going forward is we are going to formalize that, because I don't think that it is it's time consuming to have to go through everything as a unique opportunity. Rather, we would like to formalize this and make sure that people know what is permissible and what is potentially challenging. So that's the intent. But right now, some of these things are left up to discretion, and that's the way it's currently stands. I would prefer it not to have that wide a berth on discretion, and that we actually do formalize these things. It wouldn't take a lot to create special event permits and things that accommodate unique events based on certain criteria. And that is something that we are going to do.
Thank you.
All right.
Moving on to visitor recognition, is there anyone here who wishes to address the board on anything?
Good evening. Deborah Pangle, Cat Squad Rescue, Briarcliff. Okay, first of all, I just want to submit, before I forget, 3,300 signatures. But I just thought I'd give it to you anyways. I have some other information as well for you, Mr. Kahan, that I'll submit about your mischaracterization of the New Jersey tether law at one of the meetings when you guys were joking around and having a good time, you know, mocking tethering and chaining. We have all that documentation. So I contacted the person who helped draft that, and I will give you her comments. She was not real thrilled about your mischaracterization and misinterpretation that night on the video. So I'll submit that a little later. Basically, if you haven't noticed, I just wanted, no one has seen this anywhere around, but out of the Examiner this past week, and the Cat Squad has officially started its campaign of shame against the officials here in town. It's just kicked off, and it'll continue. Basically, our objective is to place the chain, excuse me, the chain of shame around all of your necks for being involved in animal cruelty and the suffering of a dog. So right now, I'm just here to officially state, and we, the Cat Squad, would like to hold Mayor Garrity, Chief Sylvester, Stuart Kahan, and SPCA, in case you're not here, Ernie, I'll send you the video, Humane Law Enforcement Officer Ernie Langaro. We are holding you responsible for violations against the Ossining tether law that you actually created, which I never agreed to anyways. But, you know, you managed to not uphold that and not enforce it. So we got big problems here. Now what I would like to do is introduce you to something and somebody.
Please speak into the microphone so folks at home can hear you,
Yeah,
Ms.
sorry.
Dangle. Thank you.
This is the actual picture of the dog chained 7 years. Not a home, but in an never comes off the chain. Hot garage, suffering. Look, Sylvester.
Thank you, Ms. Pangle. Thank you. I believe that's your time. I'm sure that others here are going to make similar points. Flies
I'm sure
sometimes.
Chief Sylvester is very happy about that. You know, we're just getting started with our new campaign, so we'll be around for a while. We're not going anywhere, I can tell you that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Otherwise I'll forget.
Can you fix your microphone, please?
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank
Janae
you.
Roberts, Tarrytown. I met Deborah 4 years ago when I adopted a kitten she rescued. I can tell you without a doubt she is tough, compassionate, and tireless in her fight for humane treatment of animals. We all have the freedom to make our own choices. Here are choices Deborah makes versus alternatives I have listened to over the past year and a half attending Ossining trustee meetings and one private meeting. Deborah chooses to donate her time at enormous personal and financial expense in order to rescue, spay, neuter, immunize, foster, and network to find forever homes for cats and dogs, rather than treating herself to luxuries such as, let's say, exotic safaris. When Deborah receives calls to rescue or monitor an animal situation, she takes it very seriously. She spends countless hours emailing and calling to raise desperately needed funds to help care for animals she takes to only truly humane welfare facilities, of which I know which ones they are, and sanctuaries. Those who, as public servants, should be participating, choose to turn a blind eye, deny facts, and blatantly lie about the number of concerned residents that have called in regarding animal neglect. Deborah and Cat Squad members over the past year and a half, of which I have participated, have devoted thousands of hours researching and speaking with veterinarians, animal behavioral experts, lawmakers, national rescue affiliates, and more, versus arrogant persons boasting about putting in perhaps at best double-digit hours researching maybe a dozen other county state laws. In regard to the Ossining trustees in humane tether law, unless you have personally each spent the past year and a half walking or driving by several times per day to view the husky in question, as dozens of residents and rescue people have, then you have no idea what it feels like to look emotional deprivation in the eye and to cry for an animal in sweltering heat. You know this, I know this, and everyone else with half a brain and heart know it. Ernie Lungaro said to me, verbatim, you might find this quite fun, as we ended our conversation the other day, keep up the good work. No. I say to you, especially you, Chief Sylvester, earn your salaries, stop trying to fool people, stop denying what you can legally do, pass a humane law protecting domestic animals, and enforce it. Thank you.
Thank you. Would others like to speak?
I'm kind of new to the game as far as working with Deborah, and I'm here not only as a animal owner, husky owner, I'm also here as a animal rehabber. I also take in huskies personally through Husky House, puppy mills, you name it. I work them. I make them adoptable. I work with Oliver's Orphan Oasis Rescue. We have taken many animals in. Excuse me.
We usually ask that folks identify their name and where they're
Colleen
from.
Hard. Colleen Hard from Peekskill, New York.
Thank you.
I know for a fact in Peekskill, you're not allowed to leave a dog out over a certain degree for a certain time frame. Wendell doesn't allow it, our animal control officer. I also know for a fact Ernie actually stopped at a house the other day and told a person they needed to take their dog in that was in Peekskill when he had no business being there because Wendell handles that. Okay? He also stopped at a business and told him that a dog was out in 90-degree weather the other day when we had it. And the guy said, dog has free roam. There's the door. Watch. Boop, there you go. You go back inside. He comes and goes as he pleases. That dog doesn't have that option. That dog gets to sit outside all day long. My personal husky I cut off of a chain. Was in a yard for 2.5 years. Okay? Personal. All right? Unadoptable. So she stays with me. Unadoptable. This dog deserves better. Do any of you own an animal? Do any of you own a dog? Do any of you own a dog? No, none of you? None of you. Would you do it to your own? None of you own an animal. Do you know what it's like? Well, no. Do you know what it's like when I get dogs from down south that were taken out of shelters that were yard ornaments down south? What I get broken and I have to fix? This breaks my heart. This shouldn't be allowed. If she can't be a member of the family, then find someone that will take her. What do you have her for? You have her sitting out in the yard all day long. Does she go in? Does she have a bed inside? No, she gets to get stuffed into the garage. She's not a member of the family. That's what dogs should be, a member of the family. The old school ways of tying the dog outside is wrong. Our dog stayed outside all day long, came in at night. But it had a nice cozy shed, not even a dog house, with hay and a bed and everything else. And then he came in at night when it got cold or hot or whatever the case may be. We didn't leave our animals outside. This shouldn't be allowed. And if it's not allowed in the surrounding areas, why is it allowed in Ossining? Town of Cortland doesn't allow it. And I know personally. Buchanan Police have personally called me and asked me to take a dog. So why is it allowed here? I don't understand that.
Thank you.
My name is Fiala Portnoy. I live in Briarcliff almost 30 years. I'm neighbor of Deborah. I just don't understand. It's look like mayor, city manager, chief police, lawyer, you all partners in crime. To change the dog, it's similar to put the dog in a prison. Why the dog have to be in a prison? Because you cannot change the laws? It's impossible. There is no logic here. I pay so much taxes for these years. You're talking about Cornell University doing environmental. You're doing so good stuff. So how not to take care of the animals? Animals cannot talk, but they are human. How you can change animal and put in a summer 96 degree? It's the biggest crime. If you put, I cannot understand you listening and the poor Deborah for almost a year and a half or 2 years try to do something and you cannot change, you cannot put some, I don't know, some kind of punishment. This is a crime. It's a big crime and there is no answer here. No logic. It's partners in crime. Justice, mayor, city manager, lawyer, all honorable people here, all smart in what you're doing here. The dog chain near the house, it means the dog in a jail. Why he have to be in a jail? Why? You're talking about to help the world. You don't help your own animals in Ossining. What's going on here? It will be answer or it will be no answer. I just want to know myself. I'm not so smart. I want to hear from a smart people. Oh, you see, the God is talking to me. What's going on here? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Virginia Leary from Garrison. I'm so glad I came here tonight. It was very interesting. I'm so glad we came. Ossining officials have failed Luna. The tether law was passed October 3rd of 18. Yeah, you all passed a law. I won't say what kind of a law I think it is. Then we watched the video of that day, and we watched you all smirking and chuckling about how you got away with stuff. Oh, this won't affect your friend, your neighbor.
Oh, no, we know what we're doing. We can exclude Luna. We saw it, we heard it, and so did an awful lot of other people. They do tape everything, right? Anyway, you passed the law, and now it's not being enforced. There's been calls into Chief Sylvester. There's been calls into Ernie, the SPCA Humane Law Enforcement Officer, who doesn't enforce anything vis-a-vis Sylvester. He doesn't enforce it either. Why did you pass this law? I mean, it's definitely been violated. The dog was out in the winter in 21 degrees. We documented everything. The dog was out the week of July 16th where we had that awful weather alert. It was on TV. Everybody knew it was over 90 degrees. And yet that dog was out on a hot pavement or shoved in the garage with maybe a little fan. Never goes in the house. Why have it? I agree with Colleen 100%. It's absolutely insane. And then likely, why have this law when you're not enforcing it? If it was anybody else that none of you knew, I bet that person would have been fined very readily. But no, this is a different story. Different story. Shame on all of you. You're all complicit in this disgraceful and blatant non-prosecution of this cruel, heartless owner. Day in and day out, this poor dog is outside on a chain. On a chain. Again, why have the dog? This is the ugly truth that we were talking about a long time ago. But this is the ugly truth. Very ugly. You all own it. And may you reap what you sow.
From Croton on Hudson. I just don't even know how to follow up with what my friends have said. I can tell you I'm absolutely sick, angry, disgusted from what I see, from you, from what I've seen for the last almost 2 years of this poor animal who has received who's been condemned to a life sentence of loneliness, solitude, neglect, and suffering at the end of a chain. I'm so emotional just to see what I see, and I see it almost every day. I don't even know what to say. I'm just ready to cry. I can tell you, one particular night, I see this dog lying in the driveway at 8:15, having been alone all day on a chain while that family's inside, and they have company all the time. And that dog is either sitting at the top of the stairs, wanting to come in, or lying in the driveway all alone, or locked up in the garage, barking her head off, and nobody does anything. And you enacted this terrible, very, very light law, and your chief of police refuses to issue fines. We have many, many photographs of this dog outside with the temperature, with the time, with the date, but why is it not being enforced? Can anybody explain that to us? That's what we want to know. But I'm just very ashamed. I think that some of these laws I'm seeing, they twist and bend according to whoever they might affect. And that's very apparent this evening. And really, that's all I have to say. I'm very shame on you all. And I'm very disgusted. And just, that's it. Thank you.
Can you just
Any
repeat your
comments?
name again? Excuse me, can you just repeat your name again and where you're from? Thank you.
Would others like to comment? Madam, yes, please. Would others like to on the board like to comment?
First of all, I want to all I'm a village trustee in the village of Ossining, but I do want to thank people from Croton Harmon, Briarcliff, Tarrytown, Peekskill, Briarcliff, I guess had 2 people, and Garrison for coming here to talk about the dog, Luna. But just so we're clear and the public is clear, number one, 1.5 years was spent on putting a tether law together with about 1.5 years, 100, 200 hours of work.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, 100, 200 of many people in the municipality. So for the public information, ideas about that anybody's getting special treatment. Family lives in Ossining. It's their dog. It's on their property. We've passed tether laws. We do the best we can. There must be disagreements about it. I don't know what the references are to knowing the family. I don't know the family, actually. The police has been up there numerous times. It isn't a conversation about, from my perspective, about whether the dog is being treated right or not. I'm not an expert actually in it. That's why this village invests. I am not an expert and the village invests. Unlike many villages in the surrounding area, we actually have an officer that deals directly with animals.
We've got an animal control officer. We send patrol officers there. We've worked with the SPCA, the Humane Society, some husky groups, the district attorney's office. We've called everybody about this.
So from I'm a representative of the public of Ossining. That's what I do here. There are representatives all over the place. It seems to me that a lot has been done in this issue. Regardless of what we do, we get other people, yelling at us, talking. I honestly think that there are experts that are involved in this. I think that we have done the best we can in tether law. There are tether laws. I try to find Briarcliff's tether law, Tarrytown's tether law. They're a little bit different. Not that clear to me actually what Briarcliff has as far as tether law. This is one dog with one family who are residents here who, frankly, the five of us are actually supposed to represent because they actually are also have rights and entitled to their own rights as people who live in Ossining. So I sort of want to speak for the public record that it isn't an agreement or disagreement with whether a dog is being treated well or not, but that the public servants here actually have done, and the village professional staff have done probably as much as they can at this point, best they can as the police. And that actually is my comment on the topic. It is not whether it's perfect, but I think that they really have done what they can.
Comments?
Yes, thank you for being here. Stuart, is there a way that, just for our sake and public sake, can you go through the process of the tether law that we adopted? What is the process for reporting and enforcement here now?
Well, the reporting and enforcement enforcement is through the police, and if someone were to observe, I'm sorry. Okay.
Please don't
I'll
interrupt.
address
Please
it to you.
don't.
I apologize, Omar. The enforcement would be through the police. Obviously, if individuals observed a circumstance where they felt that an animal was out in a weather event, which would otherwise require the animal to be brought in, then you report, and the police could, issue a violation to that individual, which would be returnable here in the Justice Court.
Okay, so I think my neighbor is violating the Ossining tether law. Best practice is for me to email a photo and then leave it up to the professional discretion of the police to see whether or not my claim's valid, and then that will determine whether citation is issued.
Well, let me answer it two ways. The thing you mentioned about the photo is important because we actually put something into the legislation that photos or video evidence would be something that would be acceptable to demonstrate that. But ultimately, it would be a determination through the police, or potentially, I guess, through the SPCA officer, as to whether or not they thought that there was a violation of both potentially village code, as well as there is, state law that it would overarching deal with it. That's correct.
All right. Is there anybody else who wants to comment on this? Madam Clerk,
Adjournment to executive session?
for matters of personnel related
Oh.
to specific persons?
Yes, for matters of personnel related to specific persons.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And with that, we say thank you very much for joining us this evening. Join us next week when we will have our work session at 16 Croton Avenue, Village Hall. This meeting is adjourned to executive session.